Next, from the City Club of Chicago, freshman Democratic Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth talks about her impressions after 3 months in office. She also discusses how her physical disabilities have been overcome on Capitol Hill and legislation she's sponsoring. This runs about 25 minutes.
Thank you. Have fun up here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jay. It's great to be here. I also wanted to do one other quick acknowledgement. President Powell of UFCW, Ron Powell, is here as well, I think. Where are you? Oh, in the back corner. Wow, what an introduction. So I didn't have much to do with the being born in Thailand or being female part. And I would prefer to have avoided the disabled part, but here I am. It's great to be here. The City Club of Chicago is a wonderful place for leaders from all over the Chicagoland area to come together, and I'm really impressed by the lineup that's both preceded me and will be following on. I've been in Congress for 3 months. I still get lost in the tunnels, but they send a staffer with me now so I don't go off on my own, because I sometimes don't come back when they need me to come back. So they send somebody with me. In this really relatively short amount of time, I've seen self-inflicted crisis after self-inflicted crisis. I have found Congress to be both toxically partisan at the same time as incredibly cooperative and gracious. Between fighting over the sequester, the fiscal cliff, the continuing resolution, and the budget overall, there are times when it feels like we will never move on from the partisan gridlock and actually govern. But then I have other days where I find moments of cooperation and bipartisanship that were unexpected. When I first showed up in Congress, I don't know if you are familiar with how the offices are doled out to freshmen, but after everybody else has their pick, then there's a lottery. And everybody's name, you take a number, and if you're number one, you get to be the first one to pick of the remaining office space that's left. And so you have staff in all the office buildings, and then it's like the NFL draft. You have like 15 minutes, and all the staff are running madly looking at all the offices to see which is the absolute best one. And of course, most freshmen end up on the 5th floor of Cannon, and the elevator only goes up to the 4th floor. So quite literally in Congress, the elevator does not go to the top floor. But the surprising bipartisanship that I found was I reached out to the Speaker's office and said that because of my wheelchair and my needs, we requested that I not go into the lottery, and that I would be allowed to pick from those offices that are available prior to the lottery, and that I promised not to pick one that was, too big for a freshman to deserve. Speaker Boehner could not have been more gracious or kind. He assigned somebody from his office. Not only did he make sure that I was given an office, I wasn't even allowed to pick it. The architect of the Capitol picked one, and I got an office of a 12-year Republican incumbent. So I have an office no freshman deserves. It's on the ground floor of Cannon. It is gorgeous. But then he proceeded to make sure that they made bathrooms wheelchair accessible for me, that they made the gym accessible, and then he did all of this out of the House administrative budget. And then he provided me with a full-time ADA assistant. So it's been incredibly gracious. There have been other signs of hope. I've met many members on both sides of the aisle that really, really want to do what's best for our country and are willing to compromise. I stood in line to get ID cards with Paul Cook out of California, a Vietnam veteran. And I was in my wheelchair. I have, my Stars and Stripe leg on, and I noticed he had a Purple Heart pin on. And I said, he looked at me and said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "RPG." And I said, "What happened to you?" And he said, "Tripwired, NAM." He has 2 Purple Hearts from Vietnam, and we got to talking. We're now both on Armed Services Committee together, and we're hopefully going to try to do some work together. So there are moments of bipartisanship. I sit on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and just last week, Mark Meadows, a Republican from, I believe it's Florida, and we worked together and introduced a bipartisan amendment, my very first one, and it got through Chairman Issa's committee and approved. That's quite an accomplishment. But it really is, an amendment will make it easier for individuals to file Freedom of Information Act requests and demand greater transparency and accountability from our government by requiring departments to respond with Freedom of Information Act requests within 20 days or to return the fee that the person had to pay in order to submit it. And the chairman of that committee, as I said, Mr. Issa, the ranking member, Elijah Cummings, have been through their share of battles, but they supported the amendment and we got it passed, so with no debate, which was wonderful. And then last week, I was able to introduce my first bill. I was looking for the hopper, because, you know, anybody watch Legally Blonde, right? There's this, yeah. This is not bad, this is not good when my political references are Legally Blonde. But I was looking for the hopper. They're like, all right, you got to go put this in the hopper. I'm like, I don't see the hopper. It doesn't look like it does in the movies. And it's just actually just an inbox. There's a little black. I was like, this is not dramatic enough. So I dropped my first bill, the bill, it was originally authored in the Senate by Republican Senator David Vitter of Louisiana. I reached out to him to ask if I could introduce it in the House, and he was, again, very gracious and said, absolutely, please do. And what the bill will do is it will eliminate fines for the first time that a small business makes an error in filling out federal paperwork. And it eliminates those fines for the first time that they make those mistakes. Because as we all know, federal regulations, federal paperwork can be pretty intimidating, especially when you're first-time small business owners. And we'll be working with the SBA to make sure that takes effect. And so hopefully that'll pass. And I know that there are many members of Congress who want to support small businesses, and this is the type of thing we can begin work on. I also sit on the House Armed Services Committee, and people thought that I asked to be on that because of my military service, when in fact I asked to be on it because of the businesses in my district. I also represent Elk Grove Village, which is the largest manufacturing area outside of the city of Chicago in the entire state of Illinois. And one of the things that my predecessor, Congresswoman Melissa Bean, taught me was it's about the district. You think about the district, it comes first. And I'll give you, I just had a meeting last week and found that I have 22 suppliers to Oshkosh Trucks, which is the only remaining American manufacturer of armored personnel vehicles in the United States. And if they lose those contracts, not only will Oshkosh Truck in Wisconsin out of my district have to shut down those production lines for those armored mine-resistant vehicles, it would shut down 22 businesses in my district. Those second and third order effects are really tremendous. And so you may not know this, but in Illinois, we have a lot of defense manufacturers. We may only have a couple of military bases, but we have a lot of folks who manufacture parts for other components that then go on into military equipment. So I'm glad to be working on Armed Services Committee for those businesses as well. So several weeks ago, and I see Mayor Craig back there, Senator Durbin and I were able to work with Secretary LaHood, who we all know is dedicated to improving Illinois transportation. And the Department of Transportation had made a ruling that the expansion of Elgin O'Hare could not be paid for by tolling the newly expanded roadway. Now, the rest of the state knows that as Elgin O'Hare. Mayor Craig and I know it as the IHOP because it goes Itasca to Hanover Park, not Elgin to O'Hare. So we'd like to change it from being the IHOP to the Elgin O'Hare. And at the inaugural ball, Secretary LaHood was so kind. He came up to me, he congratulated me, and I looked at him and said, yeah, let's talk Elgin O'Hare expansion, and cornered him in the corner and bent his ear a little bit. But I knew I was in good company when 15 minutes later I saw Senator Durbin doing the exact same thing. I thought, all right. So he was able to reverse that decision for us, and we will be breaking ground on that expansion here just within a couple of weeks. Really proud of that. That'll be a tremendous number of jobs through the suburbs. You know, so what I've learned in my first 3 months in Congress, serious divisions still exist, serious gridlock is still there, but there is a bipartisan path forward that will help us to reduce our deficit and grow our economy. We need to invest in transportation and our small businesses and do everything we can to eliminate waste and fraud and make our government more efficient. There are members on both sides of the aisle who understand those goals, and we cannot let partisanship stand in the way. I think that both parties agree that American manufacturing will create jobs and grow our economy, that we need to create a tax code that encourages our businesses to stay in our communities and succeed. And then we can also invest in what will strengthen our economy in the long term. Another bill that I'm hoping to co-sponsor here shortly, or at least co-sign, is one that Congressman Roscom, who beat me in 2006, has introduced, which is to go after Medicare fraud and waste. And in fact, Medicare fraud and waste costs this country $50 billion a year. So as we talk about trying to save Medicare, we're still throwing almost $1 billion a week away, and we need to end that. So I have reached out to Mr. Roscom's office, and they're working with us, and hopefully I'll be able to sign on to that soon. There are ways forward to do this. So we can find a way to work together and make our government do more with less. We can invest in our future. You know, like you, I went to Washington to get to work. And as someone whose survival in Iraq depended on my buddies saving me and risking their lives, I want to make every day count. And each and every one of you have your own motivation as to why you're here, as why you support political causes, as what you do to support your communities. And I think that as we look back on the 10-year anniversary of the start of the war in Iraq, one of the questions people have asked me is like, what have your impressions been? And I remember what it was like 10 years ago when I was in command of the only military aviation unit at Midway Airport. And the towers had been hit and the Pentagon had been hit, and we didn't know what had happened to the flight over Pennsylvania, and we thought Chicago would be next. It was logical that Chicago would be next, and I was recalling my men to Midway Airport, trying to do whatever we could. But I remember how united we were as a country, and that we had that sense of we can do anything as Americans, and we can work together. And we had the support of our allies around the world. And I think we've squandered that. But I think that we can come back to it. And this Congress is going to be the first start towards that. Mr. Boehner has opposed a lot of bills, and you hear a lot of rhetoric. But in his defense, he's called and allowed 3 bills to come up for a vote, breaking the Hastert rule that had to have a majority of Democrats voting for it in order to pass. And I thank him for that. I don't think he gets thanked enough for the courage that it took for him to do that, because you know that when he went back to his own caucus, that he was eviscerated for doing so. But we were able to help Hurricane Sandy victims because of it. We were able to finally pass the Violence Against Women Act for it. And I know that there are many more things that we can work on. So we have to acknowledge when those that we don't agree with do something to move the ball forward. And we also have to acknowledge ourselves that maybe some of the things that we are fighting for, we can't always get 100%. At my table, we talked about gun violence. We will probably pass 3 of the 4 major components of the gun bill. We won't get the assault weapons ban passed, I don't think, but we will at least get the background checks passed, ending straw purchases passed. I think we'll hopefully be able to end the purchase of the multi-round high-capacity magazines that allow you to kill dozens of people in just a few seconds. We're moving forward on immigration reform as well. And all of that takes bipartisan effort. So thank you so much for listening to me today. I'm ready to hear from you about how I can represent the Chicagoland area better, as well as my district. And I am going to let Professor
Green.
I was going to say Professor Green helped me out here. And by the way, he moderated the one public debate that Mr. Roscom and I had that had 1,000 people there. And by the time as I was driving to the debate site, I saw police cruisers going by with lights blaring. And I looked at my staff jokingly and said, well, wouldn't that be funny if they were going to where we were doing our debate? And I watched as the car slowed down and the cruisers took a right and drove right into the debate site. And I thought, oh, this cannot be good. And then when I got there and we were in the green room, next to Professor Green, one of my staffers came in and said, they've been serving beer and alcohol and mixed drinks for 90 minutes out in the lobby. And the crowd is pretty riled up because on the one side we have the Tea Partiers, and on the other side we've got all the union guys. And I said, are they serving the beer in bottles? And they said, yes. Yes. And that is what Professor Green had to deal with in that debate. So with that,
Okay, Graham Grady, now at Shefsky and Froelich. Where are you, Graham? How you doing? Please describe the work of the Illinois Congressional Delegation and Caucus in working together for Illinois. It's a little softball for you there.
Well, actually, I've got a great example of what we're doing. About, I want to say 4 weeks ago, so Senator Durbin hosts a delegation luncheon in his offices once a month. And in February, at the first one that I went to, he was there, and Senator Kirk was there also. And the entire Illinois delegation showed up with I think there were a couple of Republican congressmen who did not make it. They had some other conflict, but pretty much everybody else was there. And one of the things that both senators, and in fact, Mayor Emanuel was the guest speaker, said was, we need to be united on transportation. The transportation bill, MAP-21 was going to be expiring, and it will need to be renegotiated. This was something that was always bipartisan for our delegation in the past, and we need to make sure it's bipartisan again, and you will be bipartisan on this, and we will work together, because whether it is the expansion of O'Hare, whether it is the interchanges on I-90, whether it is 355, 290, 294, whether it is the rail line going from Chicago to St. Louis, it helps everyone in the state, and it helps business, it helps commuters, it helps everyone in the state. And pretty much they both said, you're going to be bipartisan on this, and he and the two senators were united in it, and it really inspired us to work together. So one of the first things we're going to be working on is, of course, transportation. And I think we have a couple folks on that committee from Illinois, which is going to be wonderful for us.
Okay. Three more. This one I like because it's all acronyms. Tiffany Carlson, where are you, Tiffany? Ah, there you are. Is that the Newark Fire Protection District? Is it? Where's Newark other than New Jersey?
It's all our community out by Morris and Iowa.
Okay. And you're an ROA, what's that?
Reserve officer.
There you go. And you're also a PEO. For those of you who are members of the City Club, you're not going to get this anyplace else. I'm sorry, Melissa. Okay, well, we'll stop there. Don't want to break national security. Hope you got that down, Miss Sweet, that I did not break national security. What kind of advice can you give young female officers and those women looking for higher office?
I get asked this a lot, and what I tell people, especially young women, is get out of your own way. As a young officer, I was so intent on being a hotshot pilot, and I was often the only woman in an all-male unit. And I worked so hard at being one of the guys that I forgot to be a good officer. And I found that I was just getting in my own way, and that I was trying to respond to things by out-machoing the guys and not trusting my own instincts. One of the examples I've used frequently is the hot cocoa story. When I took command of my platoon back at Naval Air Station Glenview, flying Hueys in 1993, it's pretty cold out there on the flight line in the middle of the winter, and I started serving hot cocoa, because you don't want to serve caffeine to pilots before they fly very close formation flights. It's not recommended. Plus, they have to go to the bathroom a lot more often. So I was trying to figure out a way, to get them warmed up, to go out there. You got to pre-flight the aircraft. You got to get things going. And I started serving hot cocoa because personally I like hot cocoa and it's warm. And some of the other, my peers started calling me the mommy platoon leader. And I took that comment in exactly the way that was intended, which was as an insult. At 25, 26, 27, I wanted to be the badass, tough chick, Top Gun pilot. I mean, my call sign was Mad Dog. And you don't, you don't actually name yourself. Your buddies give you the call sign. And so I was trying so hard to be the toughest chicken. And our unit at Midway Airport, we're all Mad Dogs. that I took the hot cocoa away because I didn't want to be seen as soft and girly. And you know what? The readiness of my crews went down. They were not as warm. They were not performing as well. They weren't taking off as quickly. And I realized that my hot cocoa was making my men more deadly. And then I realized, so I put them back, and if marshmallows and blowing kisses on it would have made it go faster, things go better, I would have done too. But I was in my own way. And I just needed to get out of my own way and succeed. So that's my biggest advice to young women coming up, or to anyone, is just trust your instinct, do the best that you can, and realize that your way of doing things may be different, but doesn't mean that it's inherently inferior to anyone else. You just got to figure out how to do it the right way.
Pretty damn good answer. We did that one already. Jesus.
Excellent.
Last question. Any more, City Club E? Any more? Okay, this is the last question. Boy, what a way to close. Mark Weyermuller, where are you, Mark? You're up there. You're moving up. You're moving on up. Don't get too carried away. Tammy, you could pass on this, but then again, you probably won't.
Uh-oh.
The Illinois pension mess. Now, okay, everyone's, I'll start giving her the sympathy. Would you support a fix? We don't use that word normally at this place. Would you support a fix with private IRAs and 401ks for public sector employees, or maybe a federal bailout? Nothing like asking a softball question to end this. Thanks, Mark. It's not in your bailiwick, but you could give it a shot if you want.
Well, I'll just be perfectly honest. I've been following the pension crisis along with just about everyone in the same manner. I don't know where the negotiations are. I don't know the details of it. I think that from my position at the federal level, the best thing that I can do is to try to get revenues up in this state and to do everything I can to support growth and to try to bring those infrastructure investments back to the state so that we can actually generate some income in this state. Because right now, you know, we're moribund, and we certainly need to do that. So that's about the best that I can do from the federal level. I don't think that there's a federal bailout anytime soon. And this is, you know, we need to fix this in our own state, because we're not the only state in this mess. So, I mean, we're pretty badly off, but there are a lot of other states, and I don't think the federal government is ready to come in and start bailing out states, nor do we want it to. One of the things that we need to do is definitely work closely with the state delegation as well as with the federal delegation to see what we can do to support initiatives from the federal level. One of the things that I'm trying to do right now is, because we passed the continuing resolution just last week, it means that some Tiger Grant funding money will be available, probably about $400 or $500 million. Not a lot, but there's a couple of highway interchanges that need $18 to $20 million apiece, and we can certainly work with them to try to get those dollars here so that we can get those jobs going in the state. But that's the extent of what, you know, minority party freshmen can do, but I will work with anybody that's willing to get us going again. Thank you.